X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And apologies for the break, but now we're here. So we're new, mysterious.
Move to our mysterious new location.
Yes. So if anyone who close tracking us down last time, we're no longer there.
The conspiracy deepens.
Yes. I mean, we could put something onto one of the walls, but I think we need to put shelves up first.
Yeah, that probably would help not to be surrounded by moving boxes.
Yeah, we'll get there.
And this is our 100th episode.
Yes, so we're not talking about the Lone Gunmen this week, we're going to talk about some other things. But first, news, I guess.
News, you guess. Just an update on FileFest. Just because 'tis the season. The FileFest Twitter, beginning tomorrow on recording this, which is going to be the 16th of December, they have said they are going to reveal something every day up until Christmas that's FileFest related, just as like a Christmas advent calendar. So if you check out filefest_MSP, that's file with a PH, and MSP Mother Sierra Papa, at Twitter. Just check that out, see what they reveal every day in their 8 days of X-Filesmas.
Ooh.
Or X-Filesmas? Yeah?
Yeah, sure, why not? I would say, I've only got a few X-Files episodes to choose from, and none of them are particularly great.
Well, it could be just things about the convention they're going to reveal. They've been a bit mysterious about it. Maybe they're going to reveal some guests or something like that.
Could be.
Of course, we can summarise this in a later stream when the advent has begun.
Yes. So, next week.
I said stream, didn't I? Yeah, on my stream I keep calling it a podcast. I'm not doing very well here.
Yeah, this is a podcast.
This one's the podcast. The streaming is the other thing I do.
But I don't think we've got any other news at the moment.
No, it's been a bit quiet on the X-Files front at the moment.
But anyway, so given this is our 100th episode, we decided to stop looking at the Lone Gunmen because it was hurting.
Just for a week.
And instead, we're looking at two different things we alluded to, or possibly mentioned it last time. So the first is the Simpsons episode, The Springfield Files. And the second will be Flight 180, the unmade X-Files script that got turned into a certain successful film series.
It's a topic that is very close to my heart, but we'll get to that one shortly.
Yeah. But first up, we have The Springfield Files. Directed by Stephen Dean Moore, written by Reed Harrison, and first broadcast on the 12th of January 1997. Going into the Simpsons cast at this point would be absolutely just, that'd be too much. I mean, Danny Castanella has been doing things since God knows how long. He's been in everything, I think, at this point.
And Nancy Cartwright is just basically known throughout the world for being Bart Simpson.
Yeah. But Simpson guest stars, obviously there's David Duchovny and Gina Anderson, who we're very familiar with. But they also had Leonard Nimoy, and I'm never going to be an excuse to talk about Leonard Nimoy otherwise. So he had a substantial Wikipedia page, and his filmography was sectioned off into its own different page, as you might imagine. And included his music videos, which I keep forgetting that, yeah, he tried that, didn't he?
What about Bilbo Baggins?
Was the one I was going to bring up. And if you haven't heard that, it's, yes, it's an experience, The Hobbit as a pop song by Leonard Nimoy. Yeah. He's done lots of voice work, and a lot of it tied up with the thing he's best known for, which is, of course, being in Star Trek as Spock. So he's in Star Trek, he's in Star Trek Next Generation, he's using archive footage in most of the rest of the series. He was in the Star Trek J.J. Abrams film, and Into Darkness, which I think was his last film role before he passed away.
Okay.
Obviously, he was in Star Trek 1 to 6. He directed Star Trek 3 and 4, wrote or did the story for Star Trek 4 and 6. Did a lot of stuff. But he's also Xehanort in Kingdom Hearts.
Oh my, I forgot about that.
Yeah. He was also in The Pagemaster.
Yeah,
voice,
yeah.
And Atlantis, The Lost Empire.
Who was he in Atlantis?
He's her father, the High Priest.
Oh, right. I didn't realise that was him.
Yeah. He also directed Three Men and a Baby, which I'd mentioned before, and you kind of looked at me in disbelief, but no, it's on his Wikipedia page. I thought he did. He's been in The Outer Limits, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Mission Impossible, Columbo. Of course, he was Spock in the Star Trek animated series, and somehow only showed up in 2 episodes of Futurama.
Really?
Yeah, like, he's only in 2 episodes of The Simpsons, which seems really low, but...
His other Simpson one has to be Marge versus the Monorail.
Yes.
So, are you going to try and give us a synopsis of the Springfield Files?
It's actually quite straightforward. It's one of these ones where you look at it and go, we were kind of just stretching the definition of X-Files related here because, wow, Mulder and Scully aren't in as much, but it counts. So, in a framing story, Leonard Nimoy is hosting a program about alien encounters, and begins the episode by talking about an encounter that occurred in Springfield. Homer tells Lenny and Carl that they should sneak out of work early and start drinking beer. Homer puts in an old tape of them working into the security camera. That night at Moe's, after drinking over 10 beers, a drunken Homer is forced to walk home after taking a breathalyzer test, but takes the wrong path and ends up in the woods. In a clearing, he encounters a glowing, thin-boned figure with wide-open eyes. Though it tells him, "Don't be afraid," Homer panics and runs home screaming. The rest of the Simpsons family do not believe Homer's story, and his attempts to report the sightings of the figure, which he believes is an alien, to the police are dismissed by Chief Wiggum. Agents Fox, Mulder, and Dana Scully of the FBI hear of the sighting and go to investigate. After receiving no results from their psychological tests of him, Homer fails to provide any proof that he actually saw an alien. Homer is ridiculed by most of the rest of the neighborhood, even Marge refuses to believe in his claims, but Bart admits that he believes Homer. The next Friday night, the pair camp out in the forest. The mysterious figure arrives and promises peace, but Homer scares away when he accidentally steps on the campfire and screams in pain. Bart, however, manages to capture the entire incident on tape. Leonard Nimoy then bids the audience goodnight. He's then reminded that the show has 10 minutes left by an off-screen squeaky-voiced teen, at which point he runs to his car and leaves. Sorry. I mean, that always kills me. The squeaky-voiced teen then takes over narrating duties. Following the successful capture of the figure's existence, Homer and Bart present it to the media. Everyone in town finally believes Homer, even knocking on his door and asking Homer questions. During a church lecture, Reverend Lovejoy gets emotional talking about the character E.T. Meanwhile, Lisa maintains that there must be a logical explanation for the alien figure. Friday comes again and everyone, including Leonard Nimoy, goes to the forest. The figure appears promising love, but the townspeople begin to riot and charge at it. Lisa and Smithers stop them just in time, showing that the alien is in fact Mr. Burns. Smithers explains that Burns receives longevity treatment once a week in order to cheat death. This includes chiropractic, administrating eye drops and painkillers, as well as a vocal cord scraping. The ordeal leaves Burns in a state of disorientation and with a soft, high-pitched voice. Back to his normal self, Burns reveals that his healthy green glow is due to many years working in a nuclear power plant, which has also left him impotent. After threatening to bring fear, famine, and pestilence instead of peace and love to the people of Springfield, he's given a boost injection from Dr. Nick. Reverting to his alien self, he begins to sing Good Morning Starshine with the entire crowd, including Nimoy and a returned Mulder and Scully, who is wearing a Homer is a Dope t-shirt. The squeaky-voiced teen closes the episode by reminding the viewers to keep watching the skies.
Thank you.
It's on reflection of watching just this episode in isolation. You realise just how much of the Simpsons is non sequitur after non sequitur.
Yeah.
Because there's just a whole pile of jokes that have nothing to do with anything in this episode.
It should be noted, one of the best received Simpsons episodes of all time. It often does make it to like top 10 lists.
Yes. One. Oh yeah. I mean, it's classic Simpsons era where it's just packed full of gags, some of which have nothing to do with anything.
It was kind of interesting though, because apparently they thought it was going to be a flop at the time because at the table read nobody laughed. Yeah. So they were worried that the episode just wasn't funny enough, and it's hysterical. We found even watching it back after years, you can still quote this episode quite thoroughly.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we say keep watching the skis all the time.
Even though that itself is a reference to The Thing from Another World, I think?
Yes, keep watching the skies.
It's the final line, isn't it, of the original attempt to make a movie of The Thing from Another World, the better known one being John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yes, I saw it sort of got to number 7 in some people's list of today's best Simpsons episodes, which is quite an achievement for a really sort of weird gag episode.
And for a series that has been running for so many years now.
Yes.
For this still to be one of the best episodes.
And actually quite early when you look at it, since this is season 8 of all things.
We're into the 30s now, aren't we, with the seasons?
Are. And apparently it is getting better again, but...
I haven't watched it since about season 13.
No, I haven't watched it for a long time, but I do like this one. I think you went and figured out where this episode fell in broadcast in terms of the main series of The X-Files.
I did indeed. I was curious because apparently at the time this aired, it was the 3rd most watched show on Fox that week. It was beaten by a season premiere of King of the Hill and that week's episode of The X-Files, interestingly.
Okay.
Where do you think it fell?
This was...
97.
97, so we are talking season 3-ish?
4.
4, okay, season 4. God, Teleco? Something daft.
It is something dreadful. El Mundo Gira.
Oh dear. Wow. Not surprised it's beat out El Mundo Gira.
It didn't beat out On Monday
It
Hero.
didn't? Okay, oh my god.
It was the third most watched after it.
Oh. I say Monday Hero has things going for it. It's not like Tesla's does bitch or something.
No. Could be worse.
It could be worse.
Could be a lot better, though.
Could be a lot better.
Given you bear in mind the following week gave us Leonard Betts, which is a decent episode.
Yes. I think one of the weirdest things about this episode is the fact that Mulder and Scully are here as Mulder and Scully. The X-Files coexist in the Simpsons universe in a move we're never going to mention ever again.
However, David Duchovny exists in the Futurama universe, so we...
Well, no, because he's Calculon, isn't he? Or Calculon is David Duchovny.
He was one of history's greatest acting robots, David Duchovny. Yeah.
Thespo Matt.
But yeah, this is Mulder and Scully, and you even get that visual cameo of the Cancer Man as well.
Yes, which is it's all great. Yeah, you're paying attention to detail here.
I also liked the brief shot of J. Edgar Hoover in a dress as well, because, you know, there are all those myths, I want to say, or kind of rumours that he did dress in women's clothing.
Yeah. Which I think also led into one of the other most quoted lines, which is, how do you think the FBI are worried about that kind of thing?
That's when Scully says that they would be better off kind of investigating some terrorist activity or something.
There's drugs and guns coming into the country in New Jersey. Oh, hardly good about that bit.
My personal favourite X-Files episode nod is Mulder's monologue in the whole thing, where Mulder goes into this lengthy monologue about alien life existing somewhere, and, you know, night falls and everyone leaves him while he's doing this, and he's still just kind of in the middle of a field saying this while Moe's smuggling an orca in the background.
Yes. And I think, because I first watched this on video, I think, without actually having watched The Simpsons. So we had the tape with 4 episodes on it. It's this, Lisa the Iconoclast, Homer, Badman, and the Stonecutters.
Oh, I love the Stonecutters. But yeah, that's another story.
And so we're watching it through, and you get to the bit where, you know, Moe has got an orca in the back room, and it's like, get him back to SeaWorld, they're onto us. And without the context of, you know, this is a regular sight gag of Moe has something happening in his back room that's shady as hell, and you never find out exactly why.
I did read an interesting review of it, because the reviews were overwhelmingly positive, but it was one person commented on the fact that even if in the future X-Files fades from public perspection, it's still going to be a funny episode, just because it's not just X-Files, there's a load of other sci-fi references in there.
Yeah.
Like the amazing alien lineup that they take Mulder to, that's got like Marvin the Martian and Gort and Chewbacca and people like that.
Yeah, and what the alien's called? Got the names.
Alf?
No.
It's Alf, and it's either Kang or Kodos.
Yes, Kang or Kodos. And there's a comment from someone on The Simpsons saying it's one of the most illegal shots in the show because no one asked any permission.
Ah, right.
So yeah, that's why Marvin the Martian is off colour.
Yeah, you did comment on that when we were watching it.
He's just the wrong palette for some reason, but someone's doing a decent impression of him there.
But you've also got, there are a whole bunch of Close Encounters of the Third Kind references, as E.T. actually name dropped in there. There's, as we said, the final line from The Thing from the Other World. There's the whole framing of it that's very Plan 9 from Outer Space, Ed Wood.
Yes, and I think it a deliberate nod to a program Leonard Nimoy did host, because former Star Trek actors, like you see on Tumblr all the time, there's Jonathan Frakes comments from one of these mystery shows that he's kind of fronting. Yeah. So yeah, apparently if you do Star Trek, you go on to make Gargoyles, and you go on to host a mystery show unless you're the star. Because Patrick Stewart and William Shatner don't do this kind of thing.
No.
But everyone under them does. But yeah, I think this episode as well, anecdotally, was one of the reasons I told my brothers to go watch Psycho.
There is the great Psycho reference with the Philharmonic Orchestra on the bus playing the Psycho theme.
But I think I said to them at one point, is because they hadn't watched Psycho, and it's like, go and watch Psycho, and you'll be amazed at how many extra Simpson gags you'll get, because it's just everywhere. It's
not just Psycho, it's Hitchcock in general, because there are a load of allusions to things like Rear Window and the Birds and things like that in Simpsons as well.
But Psycho's the main one. If you've seen Psycho, basically it unlocks so many little throwaway gags. And I think Rear Window you can just about get from context, and the Birds you can get from context. It's such a short episode, we can get too much into the whole, we reference this all the time, but the bus that doesn't slow down, we reference all the time.
Just misremembering the name of a movie.
It was also all the build to you had to keep its speed above 50, and if its speed dropped below 50, it would explode. I think it was called The Bus That Couldn't Slow Down.
It's interesting, a lot of the bits you remember aren't the bits with Mulder and Scully in, because they're only actually in a few scenes.
Yes.
I think possibly the best visual gag with Mulder and Scully is the fact that Mulder's got the picture of him in the Speedos, the Dwayne Barry shot inside his wallet.
Yeah.
Apparently, though, Chris Carter was absolutely overjoyed when they approached him because he was just so happy for X-Files to have reached this kind of point in the public perception where the Simpsons want to satirize it.
Yeah, so I think you should always take that as a compliment. I mean, it's kind of like people who sort of say, you know, you've succeeded when Weird Al calls you up and says, hey, can I do a version of your song?
Yeah.
And that reminds me of the Nirvana one where it's like Kurt Cobain, his only stipulation was don't make it about food. He said, oh, don't worry about it. It's about how no one can tell what you're singing about. But yeah, it's we are stretching definition just because Mulder and Scully aren't in this a lot. They're there and they have a few good lines.
And there are a few direct nods that you'll only get if you're a fan of the X-Files, like recognizing the Cancer Man.
Yes, and there's they actually do use the theme song at a few points.
And the office apparently is supposed to be modelled off Mulder and Scully's office, though I would argue the fact that Scully has a desk means it's not that accurate.
Yeah, I read that as well, and I thought, well, I think you failed quite spectacularly because that doesn't look that much like any angle we've ever seen the office
No,
from.
they do have the I Want to Believe poster, but
Yeah.
that's about it.
That doesn't make him break his office. Do we have much else for Simpsons?
I don't think so. It's just fun to...
It's fun to see.
Yeah, fun to talk about it as well, you know, when we've referenced it being a thing so many times. So that's what we're kind of using the special for, to talk about the things that we haven't been able to put in another episode, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's also, we could make the point that while they've satirized the X-Files on The Simpsons, they have at least got the characters down in a sufficient way that they don't read as, you know, they don't feel like bad faith caricatures.
No.
Scully is doing Scully's thing and Mulder is doing Mulder's thing, and Scully is possibly a bit quick to lose patience with Mulder, but only just.
Yeah.
I mean, given this is a season 4 kind of era, she's...
I think you're only small different with an X-Files episode, apart from the fact that Mulder and Scully are present at the end reveal, is that Mulder wouldn't give up this easily normally.
No, he would have been hanging around a lot more and bothering Homer and everyone else.
They do one little investigation and then Mulder and Scully basically sit out until the end of the episode.
Yeah. And it's one where how Mulder finds out the case feels a bit dubious, because I mean, the last time he dealt with tabloid headlines was like Conduit.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's ever done it since. But anyway, if you've never seen the Springfield Files and like the X-Files, it's a great time just because it's back when The Simpsons was really well written, and everyone's fun, everyone's in the right kind of frame of mind.
There's nothing mean-spirited about it or
No.
anything like that.
It's got a bewildering number of pop culture references, that some of which aren't going to make as much sense anymore, like the Waterworld one. See, that is a good one, is when they go out to the field with Homer and they meet Abe and a turtle's still in his teeth, and they sort of, Abe starts chasing him. It's like, oh, this is the worst case we've ever been on. Wasn't that a flesh-eating virus? No, this is much more annoying.
I kind of like the first appearance of Abe as well, where Homer's panicking alone in the woods, and Abe jumps out saying, oh, thank goodness you found me, I've been lost for days, no time for this old man, and shoves him out the way.
Yeah. And I would just note, because it's always one thing that has stuck out to me, weirdly, is that this is possibly the only episode set on Homer's birthday, which gets absolutely no attention drawn to it.
It's his birthday?
It's the same as the dog. But I think it's one of these weird ones is, from memory, the Simpsons family all get one birthday each because you can't let them age anymore.
Yeah.
But if we will venture off to something completely different.
It's something I've been literally dying to talk about for ages. And that is the spec script for the X-Files called Flight 180, which, if you are a horror aficionado like me, you will probably instantly realise what Flight 180 is. So, just for concept, this is a spec script, so this is something that's written by an outside screenwriter who have submitted it to be a potential future X-Files episode. So it's not finely polished, it's not entirely complete. The screenwriter in question was called Jeffrey Reddick. He only wrote the script in 1994 to try and get an agent that would enable him to write and produce more TV shows. The script was never finally made into the X-Files episode, but it did catch the eye of Morgan and Wong, who were really taken by the plot of it and asked if they could both work with Reddick to rewrite the whole script. So it was eventually produced as a full-length feature film not connected to the X-Files in the year 2000. And of course, as you might get if you've heard of Flight 180 before, that film was Final Destination. For years afterwards, although it was known that it was a X-Files episode originally, the script has been quite mysterious. It was eventually presented by Reddick himself to the horror aggregate website Bloody Disgusting around 2015, I believe, and they made the entire thing available to download online. It is still downloadable, which is where we've got it from. I will post a link on the social medias in case you want to read it yourself. It's just under 60 pages long because it's not a full-length script, but it is fascinating to see what Final Destination was when it was an X-Files episode. I'll give you a brief synopsis. As I said, most of our synopsises we do kind of ad-lib from Wikipedia. This one, it's just based on the notes I made when reading it, so sorry it's a bit clunky. So, the script for Flight 180 opens on a plane ride, much like the Final Destination does. We are introduced to various characters aboard the plane. There is Josh and Monica, who are a young couple who are fiancés. There's Nikki, who's a girl in her late teens. Aaron, who's in his 30s and is described as being preppy, but later in the script revealed to be a gay man. Elizabeth and Trevor Carroll, who are an elderly married couple. And there is one person who is not immediately identified, but later revealed to be Charles Scully, the otherwise unseen Scully sibling. So Charles begins to have a panic attack as the flight is preparing for takeoff. He goes to the bathroom and has this sudden intense vision of a fireball ripping through the plane, killing everyone. He panics and gets off the plane along with all the previously mentioned people, only to discover shortly afterwards that on takeoff the plane has indeed exploded, killing everyone on board. The script then cuts to 2 months later when one of the survivors, Monica, who was mentioned was one of the young engaged couple, is waiting on a train station when she observes some vague supernatural phenomena of electricity crackling over the rails. She then hears a gravelly voice say her name before she is shoved roughly from behind into the path of an oncoming train. Mulder and Scully get involved from this point on to investigate Monica's death. They have been put onto this by Skinner, but Mulder is interested purely on the basis of Monica survived Flight 180 previously because he's heard about this person on board who had the premonition. And now the fact that she's died, and also the fact that it soon reveals in dialogue, Elizabeth and Trevor, the married couple, also died a couple of weeks prior in a house fire as well. So it looks like all the survivors are being picked off one by one. On arriving at the local police station, they meet with Sheriff Wood, who's the sheriff in charge of it all, and they also speak with Josh, the now bereaved fiancé of Monica, and another one of the survivors. Scully also learns that they have taken in the person who had the premonition because he has no alibi and is the number one suspect, and she realises it's her brother and therefore quickly negotiates his release, saying they have no reason to hold him. She also calls Skinner, realising that this is the reason Skinner has put them on there, and Skinner warns that she will have to go out of her way to try and protect Charlie, because someone is kind of gunning for them at the moment, and he knows that someone will stop at nothing to close down the X-Files. Scully also does witness a man who in the script is just referred to as Tall Man, who is 6'3" and has a scarred face, I can tell you that from the descriptions, but is evidently one of these plants within the FBI that is working against them to try and seemingly get Charlie found guilty. Scully begins to hypothesize that although it looks like an extreme coincidence that the survivors might be dying due to something called sole survivor syndrome, which is where they have survived a terrible event and now kind of feel invincible and therefore aren't taking proper safety precautions, such as maybe looking both ways when they cross the street, meaning that they're coming to their ends. Mulder gets more fixated, of course, on Charlie's vision, especially when he learns that Charlie also had a vision prior to Melissa's death in which he saw she was going to die in a bus crash and told her not to get on the bus, thus saving her life. He also comments on the fact that Scully had the weird visions in Beyond the Sea, but Scully is quick to kind of discount this. They do speak to the other two survivors as well, Nikki and Aaron. Both of them comment on having these bad feelings that something terrible is going to happen, and also this sense that somebody's been watching them. Shortly after this, Josh is the next person to die. Much like Monica, he has this kind of weird encounter at his home where the phone lines suddenly fall dead and he hears someone saying his name. Mulder and Scully, who were on the phone with him at the time, rush to try and save him. However, they arrive just in time to see him plummet from the 10th floor window of his apartment. As he was screaming all the way down, they quickly decide it clearly is not a suicide, someone is bunking these people off. Scully also witnesses the tall man leaving the building and begins to wonder if he's the one who's murdered Josh. Mulder actually begins to kind of flop the other way at this point and believe that Charlie, who also still has no alibi, may be responsible for the deaths, but Scully is very dismissive of this and sure that it can't possibly be Charlie. They rush over to Charlie's house to see if he's okay, but find him in the middle of a nervous breakdown. He attacks Mulder and he's quickly hospitalised and sedated. They also go and visit Nikki and Aaron and send them to a safe house just to ensure the fact that no one can get hold of them. Mulder begins to research similar cases, and he does find several other cases that seem to match this one. The most recent was a train crash in Macon, Georgia, where one person who had a vision convinced 4 other people to leave the train before it crashed. In each of these cases, the person who had the premonition always survives, but everyone else quickly dies after the event due to a strange series of mysterious deaths or suicides. Mulder also begins to hypothesize that these deaths are caused because people somehow managed to cheat death. The premonition was only ever supposed to save one person, everyone else was supposed to die in the crash. Therefore, death has a kind of sentience and a way of kind of finding these people after they've escaped and just causing them to die as they should have done earlier. In a couple of these cases, Mulder also notes the fact that somebody was found guilty of the murders of the people rather than suicides. However, each of these suspects, named Christine and Tony, did kill themselves just prior to being arrested. He realises that the thing that connects them is that each of them had a near-death experience on the day of the incident that related to them. So, for example, Christine had a boat accident on the same day of the train crash in Georgia. Therefore, something happened to Christine that caused her to murder the survivors before killing herself. Mulder quickly gets a local hospital to look up local deaths, or rather people that flatlined in hospital but were revived on the same day that Flight 180 exploded. He immediately finds out that there was one on the same day. It was Sheriff Wood, who was shot in the line of duty but luckily resurrected. He realises from this a little too late that Wood has to be the one who's killing the current wave of people. And on trying to contact the safe house, he realises that Wood has already been there and kidnapped Aaron and Nikki. Wood specifically tells them that he has kidnapped them to make things right, and begun to drive them to a bridge on the outskirts of town. Mulder and Scully race against him and manage to reach the bridge before him, stopping him from driving off the edge. However, in the skirmish that follows, the car begins leaking fuel, and Wood, identifying himself vaguely as being Death himself, does manage to start a car fire, killing both himself and Aaron and Nikki in the resulting blaze. As Wood dies, a kind of nebulous form is seen rising from his body and flying off into the smoke. Throughout the episode, Scully has been debating leaving the X-Files, but due to these events and managing to save Charlie, she decides to stay on. In the final sting, the Tall Man is revealed to be working directly for Cancer Man. The Cancer Man is furious because his mission was to implicate Charles as the killer and he failed to do so, in part because Wood, the actual killer, just ignored any of the planted evidence. Cancer Man warns the Tall Man that this is his one warning, and if he fails again, the consequences will be severe.
Thank you. Could have been a Phantasm crossover, but apparently not.
You're thinking of the Tall Man like Angus Scrim.
How could I not, really? That's my first impulse when you hear Tall Man.
It is the X-Files naming, though, like grey-haired man and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. So it's not hard to see where one thing turned into another.
It should be noted as well, we can criticise the script for not feeling entirely like an X-Files episode, but this is a first draft.
True. We could also say that sometimes stage directions wind up in dialogue and vice versa, and it gets very confusing at points.
Yeah, it was a little messy. And there are a few bits, like, there's one critical line, I think I wrote it down somewhere, where Scully insults Mulder, and it was just shots fired. Yes. What does she say? I've got it in my notes somewhere. I'll admit my brother is a murderer when you admit that your sister is dead. It's like, whoa, Scully, whoa.
Well, I mean, ultimately, she's not wrong.
Yeah.
Is the weirdest thing about that. But yeah. It's interesting that there's a deliberate nod to cockroaches in there, because it feels very much like this was written after Beyond the Sea, given that there's a lot of references to it. There
is a lot of references to Beyond the Sea and corophages in there. I also thought the whole discussion they have about death being a sentient force just is kind of interesting, because this would have been written way before Tithonus.
Yes. Yeah, and it's interesting that the two of them could have tied together well. I will say one thing is when I found out that Final Destination was in fact an unmade X-Files script, as it is, and then that makes the FBI just make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting to read this script and realize that you could have taken them out of Final Destination and not lost anything. It's actually kind of weird they're still there.
The major differences between this and Final Destination come in the fact that Final Destination has been simplified a lot from this idea.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the idea of the person surviving a near-death experience at the exact same time as the accident being possessed by death.
Yeah, that made me think a lot of the film version of The Box.
The Box. Oh, Button.
Button. But, you know, the film version where somehow the point where you press the button, someone tries to kill someone else on the other side of town, and that's how it keeps chaining itself together.
Yeah.
And it just beyond... It's a very silly film, and I don't know... it was kind of like Richard Kelly is allowed to make Donnie Darko, and that's it, and he's never allowed to do anything ever again, because Southland Tales, my god, man!
Yeah, but The Box is kind of interesting, because The Box is based on a short story called Button,
Yeah.
which is essentially about the first 20 minutes of The Box.
Yeah.
It is a very, very creepy science fiction horror story with a really, really bleak ending.
Yes.
And Button kind of took this idea, ran with it, and then realised they'd run out of plot after 20 minutes and tried to craft something onto the end. Whereas Flight 180 is kind of the opposite, as you had the more complex story to begin with, and we've stripped this off to the bare minimum of it's just death finding people, essentially. It's not some physical force getting them in Final Destination, it's just the will of the universe.
Yeah, except for the first one.
There are a couple of instances in Final Destination where you can see death moving things. It's only a couple of occurrences, though. All the rest are freak accidents.
Yeah.
The most obvious one is the first death in the original one, where you see the kind of water flood across the floor of the room and then disappear again.
Yeah, just to make it look like he committed suicide. I do think, ultimately, Final Destination is better, because I don't like the fact that ultimately it turns out it's just the sheriff is just like shoulder barging people into trains and things and burning buildings down.
But he is still literally possessed by death.
He is, but it's the fact that it's not like... Half the appeal for you for the Final Destination, as far as I can tell, is the Rube Goldberg stuff. So if you're like Goldberg variation mashed into this script, you would get Final Destination.
Yeah, Final Destination is one of my guilty pleasure series. As you've probably gathered on the channel, I watch a lot of horror movies, just constantly, all the time. But I have a few series that I watch every year. It's not because they're good, it's because I find them massively enjoyable. But the appeal of Final Destination, especially on a first watch through, is you're never quite sure how people are going to die. It is like you say, it's a massive Rube Goldberg machine, and it's never the obvious way.
Yeah, so it's disappointing to understand that the sheriff was lurking on that station when he killed Moira and just shoved her in front of Monica and just shoved her in front of a train. It's that's disappointing.
Or lighting fires or throwing people out of windows.
Yeah, it's a lot. I kind of like the more mysterious methods that Final Destination ultimately went with.
But I do like the scene where Mulder and Scully kind of finally confront Wood on the bridge, where they have this really tense scene before the car explosion, where they talk to him and he says to the effect of, "Oh, you know who I am. I've come so close to claiming you so many times before." It's just this really, really creepy sequence there at the end.
It's true, and there can be no witnesses left of the Mulder and Scully. And it's always interesting that there's a nod to one of our throwaway lines about the Scully Family Psychic Detective Agency.
Yeah.
Because there's that nod about how, is there a thing in the Scully family of premonitions and psychic visions and things? Because Scully's done it, and in this script, Charles Scully does it.
Yeah.
And we can only imagine that Bill Scully does, and just refuses to accept that he has done. Like Han Solo in Star Wars, where he's force sensitive, but he'll be so annoyed if you tell him that.
It's also implied that Margaret Scully is psychic as well sometimes, or at least that she has feelings about bad things happening to her daughters and things. Or it's just that Bill Scully is just so blockheaded that he's the non-sensitive member of the family.
No, I think it's the whole he can't admit to himself what's happening kind of thing. I'm going to go with that.
But it is kind of nice in that Charlie is the unseen Scully. There's that one point in Beyond the Sea where he might be in a crowd.
Well, according to the script direction, he is one of those, or at least that was intended to be the casting choice.
It does mention as well something about he sent the wife and kids elsewhere at one point in there. So it is building into that fact that Charlie has a family.
Yes.
Which again ties in with Beyond the Sea, where if he's the character that fans think he is sat with a wife and some kids.
Yes. And we can say in advance that season 10 is going to throw that completely out the window.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember what we do with Charlie, but we will be circling back to Charlie eventually because, yeah, we decided we have to at some point.
Yeah.
Not sure why we need to do it with Charlie other than he's another Scully brother. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. It does lead in. One of the things that feels really out of character in the script is how they present Skinner in the one scene he's in.
Yeah, I was going to say, Skinner feels completely off. So this is going season 3, season 4.
It was written in 94. I'm not sure how that correlates to the X-Files at the time. It's got to be after Coprophages.
Well, 94 would put it before Coprophages, which is odd, because I imagine it must be a first version was written and then been revised a few times.
Well, it was obviously revised for Final Destination, but the original treatment was written in 1994.
Yeah. In any case, yeah, Skinner feels completely off, and it does feel a bit like there was a point in season 3 and 4 when it was a case of, they want to shut down the X-Files no matter whatever method they can do, and it's in this script, and it's, oh god, I'm glad we don't do this anymore. It's really quite tedious to have this come up so often.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Skinner wanting to protect the X-Files, you kind of get that once you've gone through the Blessing Way and Paperclip, but because he's more on side at that point. But It still feels like something Skinner must stick his neck out for a lot later on than that. It's too soon. So apparently, the writer felt that it was a part of Skinner at this point.
Yeah. I've got to question as well. The thing that really jarred with me, I like the idea of Charlie having this vision that saved Melissa at some point. But does that mean he's like indirectly responsible for Melissa's shooting later? Because if Melissa is... It's only the person who has the premonition that's supposed to survive.
Yeah.
So Melissa should have died on that bus.
Yes.
Which means death has cycled back and got her in the form of Hispanic man, apparently.
Yeah, it feels such an odd thing to throw in there that he'd have a vision of Melissa like this. It's like, I don't think you can sort of say it saved her one time and then she immediately died afterwards, because that's like the universe has said Melissa Scully must die. Damn it, try again. And I did think that was an interesting difference to Final Destination, and well, it's a complicated one with Final Destination, given there's the alternate ending that ultimately was cut, where you get one extra shot, and if death misses you the second time, you're fine.
Oh, I don't think I know about that one.
Have you not seen it?
No.
So the alternate end of Final Destination.
So this is Final Destination 1.
This is Final Destination 1. Oh, I can't believe you haven't seen
You
this.
found something I haven't seen, yeah. In the original ending, so it cycles round, they think they've cheated death, but then the Ruby Goldberg machine begins again, and one of them dies in the final shot in Paris, basically.
Yeah.
It cuts out just as he's about to be killed.
Slightly douchey boyfriend.
Yeah.
So the original ending was when he grabs that electrical cable just before the screen cuts to white and they cut to a year later.
Yeah.
He dies.
Okay.
Is it Ali Lata? I think is his girlfriend.
The one who survives into the sequel.
She's pregnant with his child.
Okay.
And she meets up with slightly douchey boyfriend like a year later. And basically it's kind of a celebration that they've survived. So it's like if you can get past that death second shot at you, you're fine.
So you've just got to survive the cycle, basically.
Yeah, and it's actually a kind of really limp ending because it's like Ali Lata giving birth and they just meet up and everything's kind of nice and happy.
It should be noted that the later Final Destinations, of course this is only the inspiration for the first one, bring in new rules and different ways to survive. So in the most recent iteration, if you take someone else's life, you can steal their life force, essentially. Which leads into some hilarious ones where they discover, like, the life force they just took was someone who was about to die anyway, and things like that.
Yeah, but I thought it was interesting that Final Destination had a more mechanical feel to the death, because there's a big thing in Final Destination of the subsequent deaths are happening in the order they should have done originally, because it's the path of the fireball through the cabin.
It's always a thing in Final Destination movies where you have to try and remember the order people die at the start.
Yeah.
And the movies try to throw you because they'll have things like people swapping seats and things like that. And of course, on your first viewing, you don't know which ones are going to die anyway.
No.
So it's really hard to keep track of it in your head.
But it's interesting that's not a fact in the original script at all, because I don't think there's no hint that the order that anyone else is dying is the same as the order they should have died in Charles Scully's vision.
No. But it's always the thing that throws the spanner into the mix in the Final Destination films is when they realise oh no, it wasn't Steve. Steve swapped seats and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think as well that the original Final Destination did have some X-Files alumni in there as well, because you had people like Chad Danello was one of the kids who died in it,
Yep.
who's Rob Roberts in Hungry.
Yep. And Morgan and Wong obviously were in there. Tony Todd, who'd been
Tony
in
Todd was in
Sleepless.
Sleepless, yeah.
Possibly not many more for that film, but subsequent films we've noticed there's a whole lot of crossovers between this and the X-Files in general.
Yeah. The Tony Todd character should be noted as well because he has no counterpart in the original
No,
script.
he is new.
Your closest is Wood's monologue about being death at the end, because who Mr. Bloodworth is always vague in Final Destination, but it's inferred that if he's not death himself, he's on a direct line with him, basically.
He's a mortuary assistant, come on, you lot.
But he knows exactly what's going on.
Well, he's implied, I think it's one of those, in the first film, which was designed to be self-contained, he is just a slightly creepy mortuary assistant who gives script hints. After that, yeah, he becomes a bit more elaborate.
I think he appears in 2 of the films and he's got a voiceover in one of the other ones.
Yeah. Had he completed filming for the next one before he passed away?
I believe, yes, he does have some... I don't know if it's a voice cameo or an actual cameo.
He's got something in next one,
but he
definitely.
is going to be in the upcoming Final Destination in some way. Because sadly, of course, Tony Todd passed away earlier this year.
Yeah, that was a blow.
I love his voice. I mean, Candyman is another masterpiece, but again, I really need to start a horror podcast just to wax on all these.
We're going back to your point a while back. It is interesting that this was written completely detached from Tithonus, and if it'd been made into the series, there's a really interesting connection you could loop Tithonus into this.
I think Tithonus is probably your closest episode to this in the series, because you do have that idea. It's not so much death finding you, it's more a guy who has learned how to see where death is going to strike. But it's got that same kind of theme of death being something that's inevitable and pre-written.
Yeah. I was going to say, is there anything on... Because I know, obviously, Morgan and Wong saw the script, but did it actually get in front of, like, Chris Carter and everyone else? Or did anyone actually receive the script? Or was this simply just something he wrote as a thing?
It was submitted.
It was submitted.
I know that.
Okay, so...
I don't know who it came before or why it was vetoed is not said.
But we know Morgan and Wong.
But that's how Morgan and Wong did see it.
Okay. It's interesting to speculate whether Vince Gilligan read it, and if that sort of started wheels turning and led to Tithonus.
I said it was always, everybody knew even when Final Destination came out that it was originally supposed to be an X-Files episode. That's never been hidden. But
I didn't know that.
It was 15 years after Final Destination's release that the script was actually made public via Bloody Disgusting.
Yeah, I didn't know that the first time I saw it. It was many years later. And I think I've mentioned it a few times. It's the whole... I never understood why the FBI agents were around so much. And then...
You also, when you're reading into it further, you realise that one of the FBI agents is more swayed by the kid's argument than the other.
Yeah, and that was the realisation. It's a case of, oh, that's why they're FBI agents, and that one's Mulder.
Yeah.
And that one's Scully.
They are both male FBI agents.
They are, but you can tell they've been... Given their role has been so cut down, given the focus has been re-slanted the other way. Because technically, it's more about Charles Scully, who doesn't show up in the script that much, but then he's no longer Charles Scully by that point. He's some... teen.
I imagine it's the kind of thing that would have been fixed by rewrites, that it's kind of funny that Charles isn't there for the climax.
Yeah.
Because essentially Charles has his breakdown halfway through and they heavily sedate him, and then he sits out the rest of the plot.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the comment that it's not a terribly well written X-Files episode. The idea is good, but in actual execution, there's a whole lot of very weird stuff going on.
As I keep saying, though, you can't criticise the writing for it because you know that X-Files scripts go through multiple drafts. I don't think it felt even long enough to be an X-Files episode. There would have been more done to it. It should be noted as well that this is just the most famous of the spec strips. There are several of them knocking around.
Well, do you mean the unmade ones? Because we know a few of them, like the Abe Lincoln's Ghost one, which sounds highly bizarre.
There's also one that I can never quite remember the names of, but was the final part of the Tombs trilogy.
Yes.
That was actually written by, again, his name's gone. The guy who played Tombs himself wrote a spec. It's something like...
very strange.
It's got golden eyes in the title. His eyes were golden or something like that.
Yeah, I think we read the summary of it and went, what the hell is going on?
Yeah. But there are several, and some of them actually were made into future episodes as well.
Well, yeah, there was the Goldmine one that became Aguamala.
And the Tilt-A-Wall story became Drive.
Yes. So, and I think... Actually, we've run out of unmade scripts actually around the season 5 era, and there's nothing listed after that. There will be some, but there's none that's been made famous or public.
But yeah, as I previously mentioned, when this episode airs, I will put a link up to the Bloody Disgusting article on our social medias. So do look for that if you want to read Flight 180 yourself. And I say that the term Flight 180 is recognisable because, of course, in Final Destination, it still is Flight 180. They did retain the number of the flight.
Well, why change it?
Mm.
Do we have anything else for Flight 180?
No, I think I've talked about it enough. It's a fascinating curio. It's well worth a read.
Yes. Just bear in mind, as you said, it's an early draft, and I don't think it's quite the right fit for the X-Files anyway. As you said, it's kind of it would be an odd episode, and it's not a monster-centric one, as you might expect it to be, but then it's also not normal Mulder and Scully investigate.
I'm just so happy I can talk about it at last. I'm glad I've abused our 100th episode so I can finally talk about Flight 180.
Well, as punishment, though, we have to go back to talking about the Lone Gunmen.
I know.
Yeah.
So what are the next 2 episodes then?
Okay, so next time we get Diagnosis Jimmy, and then Tango de los Pistolores.
Oh, our Twitter contingent said that's when the series starts getting good.
Yeah, only episode 10.
Out of 13?
Out of 13. In the meantime, if you'd like to get a hold of us, our email address is thingsgettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media, and please do give me a shout if you want me to promote anything X-Files related at the start of the show. We are on Twitter and Tumblr at GetStrange42, on Mastodon at GetStrange42@universedon.com, and on Facebook, where you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast. Additionally, if you're not sick of my voice right now, I also have a stream on Twitch under the name AdverseCamber42. I stream live Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT and Saturdays at 5 PM GMT. At the moment, I am currently playing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and Psychonauts 2, though by the time this airs, I might have finished Psychonauts, after which I'm planning on moving on to Dredge.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/Things Are Getting Strange, where for as little as $3 a month, you can have access to our bonus episodes, including a full Let's Play of the 1997 X-Files FMV game, the X-Files game.
1998.
1998 X-Files game. You play Craig Wilmore, it's fine. Mulder and Scully are in it a bit.
There's nothing wrong with the Craig Wilmore simulator.
Yeah, aside from...
An hour spent looking for a cigarette in a warehouse.
For example, our theme music is Envision by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember, I bring you love.